welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We've got a great episode this week. I'm going to be talking a lot about international football. Obviously, the Euros are just around the corner. We've also got Copa America predictions. And then obviously, Man United and Arsenal podcast. We're going to chat about the latest transfer news, some talking points around the managers. But before we get into that, for those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your comments down below, share the video if you can. For those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the podcasting platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review, share it with your mates, just help with any kind of engagement. Everything is appreciated. All right, let's get into the transfers then, Jonts. United have been linked with Zirkzee from Bologna this week. I think you guys have also been linked with them as well. 40 million euro release clause, had a really good season in Bologna, been linked with a bunch of clubs around Europe. Other clubs in Italy, I think, have been linked with him, as well as Bayern Munich, where he used to play. On the outs, a lot of chat around Jadon Sancho this week. Dortmund have been saying that basically they can't afford his, I think we're looking for £50 million or euros. For a permanent deal, they can't afford that in addition to his hefty wages, so they're talking about another loan deal. On Arsenal's side, in addition to Zirkzee, you've also been linked with Solanke from Bournemouth and Douglas Luiz from Aston Villa, two Prem-proven players, so, pretty solid links, I think. Both improve the team, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And on the outs, kind of a bit of a forgotten man, Kieran Tierney's been linked with moves to Newcastle and Aston Villa. And a bit of a shock link for Takahiro Tomiyasu, heading back to Italy, linked with Napoli. Antonio Conte's Napoli now. We'll get into those transfers. First of all, John, are you happy with being linked with the Inns, Solanke and Douglas Luiz? Or are you looking for, I know we discussed other strikers in the previous pod, but would you be happy with those guys if they came in?
I think I'd be happy with Douglas Luiz depending on the fee. And then I think for Solanke, I'm not. It seems like a second, third option for me in terms of who we're going for. Like if we're going to go for Sesko, if we're going to go for Isak, those kinds of players. Obviously, it seems like Isak is pretty much out of the picture now, but I would still prefer probably Sesko over Solanke just in terms of youth. And I know that we need to balance between buying players in their prime versus players that are about to approach their prime. But in this case, for the striking position, I feel like I would like to see a younger striker come in just because I'm not really happy with the young striker option that we have right now. And I know maybe it doesn't lend itself to like going and winning the Premier League next year or something like that. And you probably want the player in form for that kind of thing. But I have a feeling that we can get more out of Sesko and get him to a place where he could be part of a Prem winning team in terms of goal contributions. So, I mean, it's a toss-up between Solanke and Sesko. I mean, I still would prefer Sesko, but for Solanke, it really will depend on the fee. Because the other issue that we've got with him is that it's coming from a Premier League team. He's English, and there's going to be issues with, people overvaluing him based off his contributions last season. So I'm not all that happy with that one, but I knew it was going to happen at some point, right? We're going to be looking at different options, and Solanke was going to be one of them, but he's not necessarily the one that I want to end up with. For Douglas Luiz, again, we've been linked with him for so long now. I think I've probably talked about this with a lot of different Arsenal fans, and they're all, based off his form last season and his just general quality, they are relatively happy with having him at the club. But again, it's going to depend on the fee because he's coming from Aston Villa, who've just got into Champions League. He's a very important part of that team. It's not going to be easy to pry him away unless he specifically comes out and says he wants to leave. So, yeah, if I'm seeing, 9-figure deals for him, then I'm not going to be very happy, no. But I mean,
yeah,
those are the ins. The outs is a different conversation. I think Tierney, we all see that coming. I'd prefer him not to go to Newcastle or Aston Villa. I'd prefer him to go to a team outside the Premier League or someone worse than the two of them. But if that's who he has to go to for us to get money, then fair enough. But I did see that we're like dropping his valuation down to like 10 mil from what we were asking for last time. So if they get him for 10 mil, I think that's a steal. I know he's got injury problems and so on, but I still think he's a really good player if you get him fit. And if you think about it, like Newcastle, Newcastle and Aston Villa, there's not a lot of left back quality in the league. So I think we could get a bit more money for him. And then for Tomiyasu, I think that is crazy. I think that we must be just looking at him and Kiwior and seeing who's got more interest just to see if we can shift somebody. But if we let go of Tomiyasu, I will be disappointed because I think out of the two, he's better than Kiwior. Has shown that he can play in various different positions. Has a little bit of a bozo gene, has a little bit of a injury problem, but for the most part is I think more capable defender than Kiwior. So I think that's just us looking to see what we can get for who we've got. But I really hope we don't end up doing that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I pretty much agree with all your points. The only thing I'd say is with the Douglas Luiz one, he's a really good player, but profile-wise, I'd be a bit confused because he's not really like the Partey. He in that Villa team, Boubacar Kamara is more of the sitter, and Luiz is the one who goes up and down. So yeah, it would make me think the plan is to drop Declan Rice back into the six if you got Luiz, because I don't think that's his MO to play in the deep kind of ball winning position. He's more of the offensive side. But yeah, no, I agree with you on those ones. I think the Tierney one's inevitable, and yeah, Tomiyasu. Let's hope it's not actually legit because he's a really good player, and I think he's a good backup and good rotation, and sometimes even a good starting 11 player for you. So our links, to be honest, man, I'm not that bothered about the strikers that we've been linked with, whether it's Sesko, Zirkzee. I think we were linked with Guirassy, who's kind of one of the older striker profiles that we've been linked with. I'd take any of them. And I know you've asked questions about what does that mean for Højlund. We need two strikers, regardless. Like let the best striker, the one who's in the most form, play. If that means Rasmus has got to sit on the bench for a few games because another striker's playing better, that's fine. He's still young. He's not like 25, 26, 27 in the prime of his career, needs to play every week. You've seen him dropped at the back end of the season for a little bit and coming off the bench, and he's done well. So he doesn't look like he's complaining either. So I'd take any of those strikers. I think they all offer something. Guirassy's probably. I think I was looking at. I got my stat bag the other day, and I was looking at like kind of their goals to expected goals to see whether they're plus or minus with a lot of strikers in the different leagues. And Guirassy's massively over his expected goals, which a lot of like football nerd stato guys say generally levels out. So you see it with Son. He's had loads of seasons where he's been in the wildly plus percent plus points on goals to expected goals, and then he has a dip like last season where he was the other way around. So that would probably concern me a little bit about Guirassy, in addition to the fact that he's a bit of a late bloomer. So you don't have too much evidence of him banging in goals, and in that sense, he's kind of just as much of a risk as a Zirkzee or a Sesko, who have also had not too many seasons under their belts slapping in goals. So, but having said that, I'll take any of them. I think we're losing Tony Marshall, so Martial is finally exiting the club. So we need a second striker, whether they become starting striker or they rotate with Rasmus. I think we just need to get someone in the door. On the out, I mean, this kind of irks me. We talked about it a bit last week. Sancho's been going to be linked throughout the summer. I can tell Dortmund are going to start playing games and do the whole financial, victim stance and act like they don't have any money, while we know they're also, negotiating for Matson at the same time for like 30 million. So they've obviously got money. They just want their cake and eat it too. And they don't want to pay the fee we're asking for Sancho. Which, to be honest, I think the fee's not the unreasonable part. I think 40-50 million for Sancho is okay. I think the big problem is around his wages, isn't it? So I think his wages are like 300k or something like that, which I think is wildly over what he should be getting. So I think we're going to have a lot of stumbling blocks trying to move him, and I wouldn't be shocked if we do end up just doing a loan again and subsidising it, because I think it's going to be super difficult for us to shift him, and I don't think his form was quite as good as people made out. We talked about it last week, right? To justify someone going as crazy as we went. So yeah, the links are kind of. I think for United, the transfer stuff is a lot of kind of on the back burner because we've got more. We've got a bigger issue to deal with, which is obviously stuff around the manager. So we'll get into that then. A lot of interesting news around Thomas Tuchel having meetings with Ineos and personally with Sir Jim Radcliffe, and then also then Fabrizio Romano reporting that he's ruled himself out of the running after those talks, and some conflicting stuff out there saying that Ineos actually ruled him out after that meeting and didn't want to proceed, but now his agents kind of putting the news out to the big super agents to try and obviously make Tuchel look better in the press. I personally don't want Thomas Tuchel. I think he's a good manager, but I think we talked about it last week and on previous pods. He's very much in that Conte, Mourinho ilk where he does really well, potentially brings trophies, but then explode when he's on his way out. And I think we've had enough of those managers. We need someone who can come in and kind of toe the line in some way when it comes to dealing with the press and dealing with the squad and dealing with the ownership. And I think he's never proven to be that kind of character. So I'm not that disappointed that he's out of the running. I do actually think this does mean that Ten Hag's going to stay, because I felt like Tuchel was probably the biggest threat to his position now that McKenna's signed a new deal, and the options out there I think are not really compelling enough to make Ten Hag lose his job. So personally, I think Ten Hag's now going to remain. What do you think, Jods? Do you think this means that Ten Hag's going to stay?
I really don't know what to make of it, I'm going to be honest with you. I think the whole kind of Tuchel saga, I'm going to call it, is a bit of a weird one. I think they definitely would be speaking to him. I definitely think that he would be one of the managers to look into, but I don't know if he was, just based off of the whole idea of like a project, I don't know if he was ever going to be the right one to do that, right? Like a lot of the project type of, management hires that you see tend not to be those kinds of managers that have, a wealth of experience. They tend to be kind of, let's go and get somebody young, somewhat obscure, but with good fundamentals, and let's try and kind of use him to kind of build us up from the bottom. And I think Tuchel was never going to be that kind of thing. I think he's kind of set in his ways, just like the other managers you talked about in terms of Conte and in terms of Mourinho. I don't necessarily think he's very progressive in his thought. And when I say that, what I mean is like he's going to expect it to be kind of an old school type of setup where he has a lot of say over a lot of different things. I think a lot of what you see with these project managers these days is that you actually get more of like an understanding that there's going to be others involved in the process, that you're going to have to work as part of like a unit to really be successful. With Tuchel, Conte, and Mourinho, I think all of them, as well as many others, are very much of the ilk of like, I need to be involved in everything the club does, and I need to have a say on everything, and ideally be in the driver's seat for most of it. So I think that's probably why Tuchel wouldn't work with the whole setup that you're trying to build at United as well, because I think he is going to be, very involved and going to want to have his own thoughts and influence on what you do in terms of the transfer market, what you do in terms of other things too. So I don't think that was ever going to work. Like I felt like of all of those types of managers, Pochettino was really going to be your best bet of a manager that wants to be involved in transfers, sure, but is also relatively progressive in that he wants to build out youngsters. He wants to kind of fit in line with what you guys are trying to do in terms of buy young players, buy people with potential, don't go and buy stars, don't buy people on 300 grand a week, that kind of stuff. So the Tuchel part doesn't surprise me. I don't know what's going on with you and Pochettino now, if you're still going to be talking to him, or if there's anything going on at all. But if it's not Tuchel and if it's not McKenna and all these lot, I think Pochettino is the only other manager you're going to be properly looking at. So if it's not him, which it very well may not be, because he's just come out of a bit of a situation at Chelsea. I don't know if he's going to jump straight back into another situation with you guys. All of that points to the fact that Ten Hag will probably stay, but he's going to be like it's like a last one left at the dance kind of thing. I feel harsh for him because it's kind of like very clear they've been looking for new managers. So I reckon he'll probably end up staying in the job. But if I was him, I'd tell him to do one and say, I'm leaving you lot. Have that. I'll go and find a job at a better club. And you lot can take that for trying to look above me and look elsewhere while I'm still in the job.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think there was a lot of hope when Ineos came in. I mean, there was skepticism too. I have to admit, obviously, a lot of people were upset that we didn't get the full takeover that we wanted, and Glazers out and all that stuff. But I think when you started to see Ineos making moves and putting in the football structure that we've been dying for so long, there was a bit of momentum building and a bit of a hope train started getting going. And I think this manager debacle has kind of definitely slowed that down, because I don't think they've dealt with it well. I think all of this like open conversations with other managers, it's not going to make Ten Hag feel good about his job security going forward. And if I was him, I'd also feel extremely disrespected, because all right, we had a bad league season, but he's come out 2 trophies in 2 seasons, Champions League 1 year. Some obstacles and challenges that played their part in year two league wise, not going so well. But it's not fair to treat him the way they have, I think. So I wouldn't be shocked if something along the lines that you just said happened. And maybe Ten Hag stays for 1 season, but his contract's running out. He's got 1 year left. And even if he does really well, and let's say he does well, he still flips the V's at Ineos and says, you know what, I'm gonna go somewhere else, and somewhere where the people appreciate me and treat me with some form of respect. And it is kind of harsh, because he was linked with Bayern for a while before they went for Vincent Company, and the rumours were that Ten Hag turned it down because he wanted to stay at United and try and see this job through. And if that is the case, I know Bayern are a bit of a crazy house as well right now, but it's not really fair how that's worked out and shaken out for him. I think it's extremely harsh on him, and I know people may have different opinions about his talent as a coach or a manager, but I think we can all agree it's not the way they've gone around this and about this. Ineos is not the way to go forward, and I think they're definitely going to have to try and improve how they do this in the future, if they want the club to be successful, because everything starts from the top. And for as much good as they've done recruiting these best in class people in all these different positions, the way they've gone about this particular recruitment process has left a lot to be desired. So I agree, though. I think
Yeah.
Ten Hag will end up staying, and I don't think they'll opt for Poch regardless. I think it was probably McKenna. Once McKenna ruled himself out, it was let's keep talking to Tuchel. Now that this has happened with Tuchel, I think they'll just end up staying with Ten Hag. I'd be extremely shocked if they went and sacked him and brought someone else on board. But let's go on to your manager then. A lot of news in the press that he's going to sign a contract extension, make himself one of the highest paid Premier League managers in the league. Do you think that's going to happen? Would you be happy if he signed an extension? What's your general feeling around it?
I think I'd like to see it happen, just because of everything I've seen quoted about him and his belief of like the 5 different stages he wants to see Arsenal go through, and him believing that we're currently in, I think it was like phase 2, phase 3 in terms of his overall plan. He seems like a guy that is wanting to really see it through, in my opinion, right? Like he's shown that he's pretty dedicated to the club. He's shown that he really wants to go on and build with this squad. I don't think you go through all of the stuff that he's gone through and taken some of the measures he's taken in terms of corny stuff he's done on Amazon series and stuff like that. I don't think you behave like that unless you're trying to really build something with the team, right? I think those are long-term activities that you get into to try and really build rapport with the team. So I think he's really dedicated to us. I do think he probably will sign a contract extension soon. I can't say specifically when. I do think there'll be a little bit of a look to see, like, all right, are we doing what we need to do in the transfer market? If we are, then sure, I'll go ahead and sign one. But if we start pulling back and saying, oh, can't do this, can't do that, maybe he says, you know what, I'm not gonna sign something, then we'll wait and see what happens. So I think it does depend on, whether the Arsenal board and kind of Edu and all of those lot kind of keep up their end of the bargain and keep doing what they signed up to do with Arteta from the get go. And I think if he sees that we are going to do that, which I think we will, then I don't see why he would go and sign or not sign a contract extension. You know, the only clubs I could see him ever going to at the moment don't really need a manager, or they're in the mud, right? Like I could see him going back to Barcelona one day, because I think that attraction and that connection for a lot of Barcelona kind of former players and so on is very, very strong, and it does always tend to pull them back at some point. But I just think they're too much in the mud that he's not going to want to take that on, especially with what's happening at Real Madrid as well. That's going to be a really tough job. And it's clear that the kind of board and chairman and all that at Barcelona are a bit nuts, right? And how they've just treated Xavi. I'm sure he's looking at that and thinking, I'm not sure that's the right time to be going there. So, I mean, outside of that, I don't know if there's any other clubs that would really pull him at this point in time to say, you know what, I want to leave Arsenal. So, yeah, I would be very happy to have him stay. I think he's the best that we've got, and I've got a lot of respect for everything that he's done. I know it hasn't, given us what we needed yet in terms of a major honour, but I don't see why, if we don't keep following his plan and the club's plan, why we couldn't get one in the next couple of years. So, yeah, I'll take him. I'll keep on taking him. I'll keep on being happy regardless if we come second, because he's done far better than, a lot of other managers could have done. So I'll take him.
Arteta in. That's the
of course.
That's the clip from that. All right, I hear you, John. I agree. I think it would be crazy to not renew, and it will probably just be a time.